Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football podcast here at Fantasy and Frames, and on the Fantasy and Frames podcast network. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. With me, we got Justin Taylor. And tonight we're going to be talking about Dynasty risers and fallers at the linebacker position, the also famous linebacker position that all of us swear by. That they are the backbone of our IDP rosters. We're going to tell you, now that the NFL draft is over, as well as free agency for the most part, who we think whose stock is on the rise and who's on the fall. So just sit tight, and we'll be right back with you. Man, JT, I couldn't help but notice. First of all, great job on Dynasty 365 with Aiden last hour. You guys are talking about risers and fallers and Dynasty at the running back position. Folks, if you haven't listened to that, the podcast drops tomorrow, or head over to our YouTube channel and give it a listen or view there. Yeah, but great job last hour. Really, I think the listeners got a lot of great information there in terms of the running back position. But here we're talking IDP. Here we're talking linebackers. You all know the rules here on Shoot the Gap. We cover on air the defense questions, but if you have offense questions in Dynasty 2, JT will be happy in the chat to give you some information there. Before we get into all that, JT, how are you doing? I see the new backdrop you got going on here. Can you tell us a little bit what's going on, man?
Yeah, pretty crazy. A lot of movement for me here into the school year. We're trying to finish it up. We got about a week left of school. My son's 11, just finishing up 5th grade. So finishing all that up. But my girlfriend and her 2 kids are moving in, and her daughter, who's also 11, finishing up 5th grade, has now taken my office. My office is now hers as her room. So I've had to move everything to the basement into my semi-man cave down here. Now I have a lot more TVs to distract me while I'm doing podcasts. But yeah, trying to get everything. We've been, I stayed up to about 5 a.m. 2 nights ago, moving everything. As you can see, all the stuff behind me. I have a lot of junk. I have a lot of stuff, and this is only a small percentage of the stuff behind me that I have. So yeah, it's trying to been getting everything reset up, get the desk put back together, put up the mini studio, and get everything going. So yeah, it's been good. It's been stressful and hectic, I have to be honest with you, but we're gonna get it all taken care of. Tomorrow is moving day officially. Getting all the stuff out of their house and moving it here. So my back is probably going to be hurting by the end of the day. I'm not as young as I used to be carrying stuff around. So I'm hoping to get a couple young guys to help me out and do a few of those things. But yeah, things been pretty crazy, and drafts are going like nuts. I'm going to do a little shout out here. If you haven't joined a Fantasy Cares Eliminator League, please do so. Fantasy Cares, I'm in the middle of an IDP only draft. Jorge, do you want me to run through my IDP draft for you real fast? You want to hear who I got?
Yeah, well, first of all, I didn't realize
I should have told you about this. It came up like last sec. Honestly, I got an email. I jumped in. I looked at it. There was only one spot left. I got in, and then the draft started like the next day. I actually missed my first pick and had to beg for them to let me get back in, because the way the eliminators work is usually if you miss your pick, you're just on auto draft the whole rest of the time. So I was like, I didn't know we started the draft. I was like, I had graduation, my niece, like everything. I was like, sorry, things have been nuts. I'm like, dude, please like give me my pick so I can actually like draft. So it's an all IDP Fantasy Cares Eliminator. If you win these, you can win a spot into Scott Fishbowl. I'm in Scott Fishbowl, but I still do the eliminators because they're so much fun. I'm doing an all IDP one and a college one. I think me and Chris were in the college one together last year, so I'm in that one as well. Really fun ones. Best ball. They do different scoring every year. $10 to charity gives you a shot at getting in the Scott Fishbowl tournament next year. They still have some openings, so jump in there. Please go out there, follow them. If you don't know where to go to, jump on Fantasy Cares on Twitter or X. I have it on my page at JT Orange. I've shared it a couple times, different places you can go. Scott Fishbowl. I think it's .com or .org. You need to look that one up. Scott Fishbowl. But there's a link on his site to go there as well. super fun times, a ton of different people from the industry, in and out of the industry. But I was going to walk you through my picks because I want to see if you were going to rip them or you were going to like what I've done so far.
Dun, dun, dun. All right, here we go.
All right, so this is just because we don't want to waste too much time. I'm just going to tell you my roster, not in the order of everybody been picking, because we will spend a whole show doing that. So
Okay, fair enough.
my picks so far. So this league is set up all defense. It's basically a best ball. Whoever plays the best gets in. It's non-lineup. The only caveat is you have two cornerbacks have to count every week. So you have to have two cornerbacks count for your scoring. It's almost like a 2 QB league where two quarterback scores have to count. Everything else, it's high defensive back premium for cornerbacks and safeties. With tackles, they get a slightly more points than linebackers. D-line gets a slightly more points for tackles than linebackers do. There's some different things, and I won't run through the whole scoring, but it's pretty great. So my picks so far, running through this draft, I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna do a draft order instead of who I have. So I took it the 110 Travis Hunter, rookie cornerback out of the Jags. Now the secret in this league is you do get offensive points, but there's obviously not a lot of guys that do offensive points. But I looked at the rules right before, and it said that defensive players, if they get receptions, touchdowns, get offensive points. So I'm like, oh, I got to take Travis Hunter. Like, have to take Travis Hunter. I think people forgot about him. They didn't realize. I also got lucked out is that he's listed on my fantasy league as a wide receiver. So I said, hey, can he be counted as a cornerback? They're like, yeah, we'll switch him for this league. I'm like, boom. So I was like, I already feel like I won that. So that was a nice move there. So I got Travis Hunter at 110. At 204, I got Zaire Franklin, my guy out of the Colts.
Wow.
304, I got Jonathan Grenard for Minnesota Vikings. 410, I got Antoine Winfield for. Ooh. I couldn't believe he was still there at 410, to be honest with you. I had him and Cam Hayward as my guys I was going to take there. Cam Hayward with the pick in front of me because defensive tackles get a nice little premium for tackles and sacks in this league. But I got Cam Hayward went right in front of me, so then I went Winfield. 5-4, I took Caden Ellis, a guy we're going to discuss on this show. Couldn't believe a guy was a top 5 linebacker, dropped to 5th round. Got him 5-4. Came back, and we talked about this in a past show. I went off the board a bit, and sometimes in these charity leagues, you got to like not just go with rankings and look at value. You got to just go with your gut on a guy, Jeremy Chin, Washington Commander, now a Las Vegas Raider. I took Jeremy Chin at 6'10". We talked about him a couple episodes ago. I think he could have a monster year for the Raiders, so I jumped in on Chin. 705, my guy, Tuli Tuipulotu from the Chargers. Got him at 704. I'm loving him to have a big year this year. I needed a slot corner. On this team to really help me out. A guy can get tackles. Pass defenses are worth a ton of points. I think it's 6 for a pass defense. Tackles for DBs are like 2 points for a solo tackle for a DB. So I'm like, I got to get a slot corner in here. I went Kyler Gordon for the Bears at 8'10". I jumped in back at linebacker. Jordan Brooks at 9'4".
Wow.
And then it's coming up to me right now. It's one pick away. I'm going to let you decide. Tell me who I should take here.
All right.
On my list right now, I think I'm going to go another safety because safety gets really nice premium in this league.
Okay.
I've got on my pre-draft list, I'm one away, so whoever he picks is going to go to me immediately. I've got Deshaun Elliott, Tyler Newman, Jaden Hicks, Kalen Bullock, and Quan Martin on my list.
Man, it's kind of
hard. The other option is like there's some linebackers and DNs there are nice, but I kind of feel like safety with what is going. What do you think out of those guys? Anybody you like particular?
Yes. So I love Tyler Newman for the Giants. I think he comes back and plays really well this year. He had a great rookie season. Injury kind of cut that short, but he should be back better than ever. And he's going to be helping at that run support with Javon Holland, their free agent signing, being primarily their coverage safety. So like Newman, but And I'm not trying to play into your homerism at all, but it's kind of hard to ignore what Deshaun Elliott did last year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I had to go, I'd be Elliott 1 and then Newman 2. Those are that, but damn, those are pretty damn good options at the safety position right there for you.
That's what I was thinking. So I had Elliott first, and usually that's why I wanted to ask. I was like, I really like Newman. I think Jaden Hicks is a guy I maybe can get a round or two later. And again, you don't have to start a guy in any position in this league other than 2 cornerbacks have to count. Every other position, whoever scores the most plays for you because it's an eliminator. A team gets eliminated every week. So I was like, I kind of like Elliott. And for once in my life, I don't have any Steelers player on my team yet. So I'm like, this might be the spot. I can get Elliott. So, all right, I've got it locked in. Elliott's my one. Because I've on these FC eliminators, I will tell anybody that gets in there, definitely get in there and preset certain rounds when you're getting close to your turn, because it can get crazy. You can miss out, and you don't want to miss out on your picks. So get in, grab 3, 4, 5. About 5 picks out is when I go in and start putting about 5 guys in, and I set my pre-draft just in case I get busy and miss it. So I'm going to go Elliott 1, Tyler Nubin 2, which means I'm going to get one of those guys there's only 1 pick to me. So I love that. Perfect.
Yeah, we are in sync, my friend. No, nice, man. It sounds like you got a lot going on. I'm surprised you're actually on the podcasts today. I figured you would have needed like JT needs recharge day.
We had gymnastics. You kind of saved me, to be honest with you. We had the gymnastics banquet tonight, and I was like, "Are you coming to the gymnastics banquet?" I was like, "I have 2 podcasts, and I have to write a story for DLF." And so I got out of the gymnastics banquet, which I do go to all the meets. I definitely don't want to go to a 5th grade girls gymnastics banquet,
especially on fantasy.
Mom's all over that. Mom's all over it. She got it taken care of tonight. I supported in the stands, so yeah. So kind of saved me on that one tonight.
Well, there you go. Anything I can do to help out, I'm always there for
Appreciate it, Jorge.
So a couple of programming notes. We are going to be having on in a few weeks on the draft show. Gary Davenport's going to come on, and we're going to talk a little bit about IDP draft strategy. So look forward to that. We mentioned also a couple of weeks ago that we're putting together the Shoot the Gap Listeners League. I'm thinking it's going to be on ESPN just because you can have 5 position designations. That is a real winner for me. Although everybody loves Sleeper, but don't sleep on the ESPN app. They've made strides. That's as far as I'll go.
What you said. I told you I've been on an anti-ESPN rage for about a decade now, and then you showed me all the updates, and I was like, dang, they've actually finally, after 15 years, updated their site, because I think their site looked almost identical to when I started one of my home leagues almost 20 years ago. Yeah. So I'm like, so that's nice to see they're doing that. Oh, Jorge, I was going to tell you, I am starting a family league with the kids. They all want to get into fantasy football. I talked about them on Mother's Day this weekend. Nice. Mom let me talk about fantasy football, which is nice. I got all the kids in. They're in the league. I've got a couple buddies and their sons that are jumping in the league as well. They're going to do a combined team. When you're a little guy, when the little man gets a little older, you guys are going to jump in. Absolutely. I'm going to save a spot for you. I'm going to carve out an extra spot for you in the league.
I appreciate that. That is very thoughtful of you. And one way or another, he will be indoctrinated into the world of IDP fantasy football. Other things going on right now over at fantasyandframes.com when it comes to IDP, as well as some other formats of fantasy football. We're going to be putting out an IDP Fantasy Football 101 series where we're basically telling you, the basics of IDP fantasy football. That's something that I think a lot of people who are intimidated by playing IDP will get a good kick out of, and really help break down, the ins and outs and why you should not be afraid of giving it a shot, as well as give you some other articles where we go into more of the advanced strategies. So that's something to check out. We're going to be dropping articles at defensive lineman, linebacker, and defensive back, doing our rookie draft, NFL draft fallout, giving you our ideas of like who are the rookies that you should be paying attention to at those 3 positions for IDP. Speaking of Gary Davenport, who I mentioned just a little bit earlier, him and I have been talking. As you know, Fantasy and Frames has been sponsoring the IDP Fantasy Football panel at the Fantasy Football Expo since like time began. So we have the panel finalized for the most part, which is going to be a fantastic group of IDP analysts from all over the fantasy field. We already have a lot of things planned, unlike other panels that we've done in the past. So, really looking forward to giving you more information about that. And yeah, IDP rankings, they're going up on Fantasy and Frames. We're putting in the rookies now on our Dynasty rankings. And before you know it, we'll have some early redraft rankings. And man, it's starting to get a little crazy. But just shout out to everybody at Fantasy and Frames who's putting in the work right now and getting all this content out. We couldn't be more proud and appreciate you all. And with that, let's get into some IDP risers and fallers post NFL draft. I want to start with a faller. I want to start negative and like end positive, if you know what I'm saying. So let's go to one of I want to say our guys, because I think technically he was more your guy because you had season tickets to his team, but you and I on Shoot the Gap last fall, we talked about him a lot just because he was one of the top IDP linebackers, just because he was accumulating tackle after tackle after tackle and boosting your fantasy floor each and every week. EJ Speed goes to Houston, where he is now the third wheel behind Henry To'oTo'o and Azeez Al-Shaair. I think he's a faller. Just the fact that there is a competition for tackle opportunities and snaps right there, that's kind of tricky. And I went back and I started looking at some of the coverage items. Like EJ Speed, great run stopping, tackling linebacker. Coverage, really bad. I look at then the Texans last year, and Henry To'oTo'o was actually quite the liability in coverage also. So part of me wonders whether or not these two are going to be in competition as training camp eventually occurs for the second linebacker starting role. But I don't know, the fact that they're going to be in competition, I could see a situation which is not uncommon in Houston because they cycle through linebackers quite a bit the past few years in terms of like this person's starting this week and that person's starting that week. I think they were trying to figure out who are the guys that they want there, and I think that's going to continue into this year because, Azeez Al-Shaair is going to be one of the starting linebackers. That's a given. But I could definitely see a scenario where EJ Speed and To'oTo'o basically alternate. Who sucks less in coverage? Okay, you're playing this week. Oh, you had a bad week. Okay, we're going to put the other guy who sucks but not as badly in coverage at the linebacking position. So that is something that I obviously do not like. You obviously have your opinions on EJ Speed, being the Colts fan. Why don't you give us your take there?
Here's the thing with EJ Speed. As a Colts fan, if you talk to Colts fans, they're like, fantasy production, yes. Tackle production, yes. Look at the numbers, yes. Actual being good in games, very okay. He made a ton of tackles, a lot of plays, but man, he was making tackles downfield. He wasn't a guy that was aggressively pursuing the ball and making tackles at the line of scrimmage or at the attack point. He was kind of a guy using his speed because he's slightly undersized, using his speed to basically run down plays and get tackles from behind. So while the stats were nice, they weren't super productive in a real life NFL standpoint. And that was, I hate to say it, but that was the Colts defense last year. They had 3 players in the top 10 in overall tackles. That's a bad sign. It's a bad sign in real life. It means you're not getting off the field. And it's not like they were getting tackles for losses. These were all tackles 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 yards downfield. So it was one of those things. Their defense was not good. They were not stopping. They were not getting off the field either. They were on the field constantly. Now, I will give them a little bit of reprieve in that their offense was had one of the worst time of possessions in the entire league last year. So the Colts were either scoring immediately or 3 and out. They put very few long drives together. So the defense was on the field for an incredible number of stats. I don't have the stat in front of me, but I'm almost positive they were top 5 in the league in defensive snaps that they were on the field. They were on the field a ton. So EJ Speed, while a fantasy magician, we talk about it all the time in fantasy, You don't want the shutdown corner in fantasy. You want the guy that plays opposite the shutdown corner because that's the guy that everyone throws at. That's the guy that's going to get picks. He's going to get pass deflections. He's going to get tackles because he's getting thrown at constantly. EJ Speed, even while Franklin was their best linebacker and tackler, EJ Speed was one of those guys that just kind of like came behind and cleaned everything up. And he got a lot of stats. And that was great. And it worked well for the Colts as far as that. Him not being on the Colts, I think, hurts. I think it hurts bad because he fit their scheme as far as what they needed to do, not only in a good and bad way, but like fantasy-wise, it was the perfect scheme for him. I am not 100% sure this scheme where, I mean, they're using outside linebacker DNs for Houston kind of looks where the Colts ran a traditional 4-2. Straight 4 linemen, 2 linebackers. He was by far the outside guy playing away from the nickel slot every time, and then Franklin was the middle linebacker. So it was almost like Speed was a strong safety slot corner type of guy, box safety. I mean, that's kind of the position he played. I don't know if that's successful on a lot of other teams. So I'm definitely worried about him. I have him in a ton of spots in IDP leagues. So I'm worried. I'm real worried that we are going to see a major drop in production. And here's the thing, Jorge. Even if he wins the job, I still think we see quite a significant drop in production. I don't see him doing what he did in Indy on another team. The only other team I think he does this similar IDP stats wise is if he was on like the Rams. Like that's a team, that's a fit for him in his style of play. But he's, like you said, he's a smaller guy who is not going to attack the line and fill a hole. He's not big, but he's also not great in pass coverage, which is not great. You know, it's like I'm a small linebacker who's not great in pass coverage. Oh, that's not good. That's not good at all. So they really tried to make him into the Shaq Leonard role, which Shaq Leonard was when he was healthy. My God, I mean, IDP freaking gold. I remember one year I got him in the last round of the rookie draft, the very last pick, and he ended up being number 2 in the league and number 3 in the league with scoring. It was one of Patrick Mahomes' monster years, and Todd Gurley had like his best season of his career, and Shaq Leonard was like number 3 in the entire league in scoring.
Right.
It was off the charts, and I got him as a 6th-round rookie in a salary cap league where I got him like for dirt cheap for 4 years. It was magical, but they wanted EJ Speed to be that. He's just not that athlete that Shaq Leonard was. That Darius Leonard, for anybody who knows him, my Darius Leonard changed the name halfway through his career. But that's a toughie for me on Speed, man. Even if he's okay and starts for our team, I don't think we ever see the production we saw with the Colts. I don't think it's ever coming back. I think he's a mid player at LB right now. Man, he would be like an LB4 for me probably, and that's if he starts. Honestly, if he loses snaps, it could be real ugly for EJ Speed owners.
No, I like that. That makes a lot of sense. Let's go. Let's bring in some positivity here now into the conversation. And not only is it going to be a positive conversation, I'm going to talk about a linebacker for Green Bay. That this is kind of a deep cut. This is one of those like I'm moving him up the rankings because I could see the opportunity heading his way. Maybe not this year, but definitely next year. And I'm talking about Isaiah McDuffie, linebacker, Green Bay Packers. He was re-signed by the Packers in free agency this past March. Recently, we found out that the Packers declined the 5th-year option on Quay Walker. So for all intents and purposes, he's probably on his way out of Green Bay. We saw the emergence of Edgerrin Cooper last year as one of the more elite linebackers. So the question is, who's going to be that other inside linebacker? Who could benefit the most here? I think it's going to be McDuffie. He was by far the most efficient linebacker, one of the most efficient linebackers on the team outside of Quay Walker, ironically. He had the 2nd lowest missed tackle rate behind Walker. again, it's one of those things where like you, and I'm going to talk about this in the IDP 101 article, but one of the things I want to tell people when it comes to IDP is just because a couple things. Just because people don't have like the sexy name in defense doesn't mean that they're not IDP viable or good for you, or good for your roster. You don't have to have, the top 30 LBs to win a championship, or top 25 or 24 LBs. When you can win with an LB4 who's just, in a good situation, in a good matchup on a good week. The difference in like point per game averages between an LB1 and an LB2, okay, it's quite a bit of a gap. But once you start getting into LB twos and threes, now that gap starts to tighten. And then once you get to LB3 and LB4s and going and so forth, it really is a crapshoot in terms of like who you really think is going to, outperform their ADP. It's more of a matchup based situation. So like if LB5 or LB4 is going against an offense that is primarily a run heavy offense, which like the Pittsburgh Steelers I'm anticipating being this year, they could potentially have a very boom week that week, and that could be just enough to get you that fantasy title, whether it's in redraft or dynasty or what have you. And so, in speaking of this from a IDP dynasty point of view, I definitely see McDuffie as currently somebody who could benefit, late into next year, late into the season this year. Quay Walker did have some injury issues last year, and he is always one boneheaded move away from being suspended for a couple games because the guy just does dumb shit. What can I say? And so Isaiah McDuffie could definitely slide in there whenever given the opportunity. He did very well for the Packers. So again, deep cut. I'm moving up my rankings just because of the declining of the 5th-year option of Quay Walker. And if you are the Quay Walker dynasty manager, McDuffie's probably available for you, on your dynasty leagues waiver wire. I would go get him. I would go get him as an insurance policy for Quay Walker. You're not expecting immediate production, but you're expecting that chance, that opportunity. He plays well. He re-signed, like I said, they re-signed him in March. So obviously the Packers see something in him that they really like. He had a career high 97 tackles last year. So he keeps getting better and better each year. The organization has faith in him. The defensive coordinator has faith in him. And they've shown that Quay Walker, they don't have faith in him. So if anybody could benefit from the Quay Walker disappearance, probably towards the end of the season or into next season, it's definitely, I believe, Isaiah McDuffie.
To me, he might be one of the best values available. People have just totally forgot about him. They don't realize the stats from last year. Everybody's thinking, oh, 2nd-round pick Edgerrin Cooper last year, Quay Walker, 1st-round pick a couple years ago. I'm with you. I don't think the Packers like Quay Walker at all. Like, it just seems like they're tired of. It's like everything they're doing makes you think like, do they really like this guy? They're not acting like a team that wants to keep him at all. And then take on top of that, not only did they take Edgerrin Cooper in the 2nd round last year, they took my guy, Tyron Hopper from Missouri, in the 3rd round. So I think Hopper's a guy that's going to work in there as well. I think you could easily see McDuffie being the guy this year. Hopper is a deep cut for me. He's a guy you don't want right now. Keep an eye on him though. I think he's a guy that could potentially break the starting lineup maybe next year for them. But I agree with you on McDuffie, man. I think people are. I don't even think he's on most people's radar, but he puts up solid stats, and I think he's going to be in the lineup sooner than we think. And it's every time you turn around, something happens to somebody's hurt. McDuffie's in the lineup, and he's put up points.
Yeah, you go back to his 2023 stats, like when it comes to IDP Fantasy Pro scoring, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points when he's been asked to be 7 games when asked to be the starter filling in for injured linebackers, double-digit fantasy points. Like he's definitely one of those, solid LB3s on a high week, but LB4 that could fill in, especially during the bye weeks. Especially if you have an injury on your linebacking core, that can come in and given the right opportunity, play really well. And again, it's like you said, like I agree with you. I think Green Bay is just like, when can we get Quay Walker off this team? Like, next year, great, let's do it.
Yeah, it feels like they're just waiting. You know what I mean? I think they're just like, hey, I don't know if we got much room for him. We don't want to just straight cut him, but they're like, can we just let can we let it run out? Can we let the his contract run out and just move on? You know what I mean? It's just it really feels like he's a guy they are not in love with at all.
Yeah, we got a comment here from Aiden in the chat. He says they didn't pick up his 5th-year option, and they wouldn't have taken Cooper past year if they were confident in Quay or bring back McDuffie, who's a rising player, not trending up for Quay Walker. And here's the thing: Quay Walker, when we talk about his fantasy points per game average last year, the guy was a stud. The guy was like an LB1, borderline LB2. So he does produce. You know what I mean? But again, it's one of those situations where like you could have a really good IDP linebacker who's in a really good spot go to a team like a EJ Speed where he's the third wheel, or he's, competing for the second spot there. So it's one of those things where, yes, you trust the talent and you trust what you've seen. But at the same time, if he's going to a place where there's not a clear pathway to snaps, that is a huge red flag. And the fact that, Green Bay doesn't want to bring him on, that sends a signal to all the other teams in the NFL who would need help at linebacker. Like, this guy might be a head case you don't want to deal with, or.
Jorge, does he feels like a Cincinnati Bengal. Quay Walker should be on the
Oh,
Bengals. He
come
should be on the
on.
Bengals.
Come on. That is a low
That's a
blow.
low blow as a Steelers fan. I'm sorry. That's my Vontae's perfect hate coming through. I'm sorry.
I'm right there with you. All right, let's go into another faller here. Um, this one hurts. This one hurts, and I've talked about him a little bit. Well, let me preface this. Let me back up. I've talked about him a lot here at Fantasy and Frame since 2017 when talking about IDP linebackers. He came over to the New Orleans Saints from the New York Jets in free agency. New York Jets, his last season there, I want to say he had over 100 total tackles. He was looking for that payday, and he got it in New Orleans. And ever since then, he has been, a man on a mission, a hashtag tackle machine, a competent edge rusher, somebody who could make plays in coverage against the run, applying pressure to the quarterback. And the guy has been playing for like so many years. And I'm talking about Demario Davis. And this hurts because I think he's a faller. And the fact is, I know he's a faller because at the end of the day, Father Time catches up with all of us. And the New Orleans Saints drafted Danny Stutzman, one of the best collegiate run stopping linebackers. Coverage wise, that's not his skill. That's not his game. We have Brandon Staley coming over from the 49ers, formerly the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. He runs a 3-4, requires, his weak side linebacker to basically play, the passing lanes, go out in the coverage in the middle of the field. That's not Sussman's. That's not in his wheelhouse. Like, I'm sure he will get better over time just because he's a pro now and he wants to improve his game. But they didn't draft him because they want to build Stutzman up and have like a developmental project at the linebacker position. They brought him in to compete immediately, and the only one that I see him competing directly with now is Demario Davis. And so it's one of those things where we could see a situation where Davis and him kind of, Davis starts losing some reps and some snaps to Stutzman. And we could see a situation where the New Orleans Saints, they realize, hey, let's cut bait before it goes downhill really fast. And that's a shame because Davis has been solid. Like, he's a solid linebacker. If Stutzman didn't get drafted by the New Orleans Saints, I would have been like, Demario Davis, till I die. This is not one of those situations. And unfortunately, given the caliber of run stopping linebacker that Stutzman is, and that's right up, Demario Davis's wheelhouse, competition is going to be there in training camp. I would not be surprised towards the end of the season if you start to see more of a decrease in Davis's playing time and more of an increase in Stutzman's, just because I don't think Demario Davis can keep him off the field all season long.
I mean, Demario Davis, 36 years old. The guy just keeps performing. I don't think this is going to happen, but how weird would it be if Stutzman, instead of taking Davis's spot, he takes Pete Werner's spot?
Oh my God. You see,
just because Davis, like, I mean, I honestly could see a spot where like their plan is for Stutzman to take Davis's spot, and Davis just keeps balling out, and Werner, who I've talked up a decent amount the last couple of years, thinking that he's all right. this is the year he's going to get it all together. This is the year he's going to put together. He just hasn't been the IDP guy we wanted. What if all of a sudden they're like, man, we really want to get Sussman in there, but Davis keeps playing his ass off. And all of a sudden we see him playing over Werner. I tell you what, Werner's another guy like EJ Speed. I have a lot of Werner, and I'm definitely nervous that, like, even if he doesn't get beat on Sussman, that they're just like, oh, he just doesn't put up good stats and something happens. But yeah, he's the perfect replacement for Davis in reality. If you look at the way they play, how the type of players they are, you're thinking, hey, man, you're 36 years old. How much longer can you be just a thumper? Right. Mario Davis is that guy. I mean, it would be insane to see a dude play middle linebacker, a thumper he's an old school type of guy too.
No.
To have him, if he played into his 40s,
oh my God, can you imagine?
That seems insanity. But if he got like a couple years left on him, who knows? Who knows? But I tell you what, Stutzman's going to see the field somehow. And if DeMario Davis don't get beat out by him, as a Pete Werner owner, I'd be nervous.
I mean, Davis is the model of consistency. At the same time, goddamn, like there's only so long.
It's like, how long can he last before he falls off the cliff, right?
Right. I mean, no, exactly.
We're not all that young. We're obviously not professional athletes, but I know when I turned 35, went past 35, I started seeing a quick decline. And when I got close to 40, it was like a punch in the face. I'm like, I can't do that anymore. I'm going to get myself hurt. Like just general stuff. Like I said, I'm not a pro athlete. So I can't imagine being a 36 to 40-year-old pro athlete, not being a QB that's protected, but being a linebacker who literally your entire job is just to freaking ram linemen and running backs head first all the time. If anybody could do it, I could see him being able to do it for a long time just because he just doesn't seem like he falls. But we've also seen, Jorge, in the past that these declines, when they happen fast. If it hits and it goes down quick. It's not like a slow decline throughout the season. It's like you see a guy and it's like they fall off. More injury concerns, but, Darius Leonard, Shaq Leonard, he was one of those guys. It was like once it hit and he started declining, it was bam. I mean, it was like that. It was like, oh. I mean, he went from one of the highest paid players in the league to getting cut in a year.
Right.
Like that. I mean, that it was like that quickly that they were like, oh, he doesn't have it anymore. He just doesn't. So while we're hoping DeMario Davis keeps it going and keeps pumping, because he has been. So no, we haven't seen any decline from him.
Right.
But the question is, how much longer is it before it happens?
And the fact is, if the Saints weren't concerned about how much time he has left being a producing linebacker, they wouldn't have drafted Stutzman. The Saints have so many other options they should have addressed. They're
a team that is just, he needs everything. So if they're going after something in the draft, you think it's probably pretty high priority, right? Because it's not like they're like the Eagles who are like, we're just going to take the player we like the best because we're loaded.
Exactly.
I mean, the Saints need everything.
Yeah. Who's a faller for you?
So looking through this list, trying to kind of figure out guys, you always like to talk about the guys coming up as opposed to the guys going down, right? It's just you always feel a little bit about that.
Right.
I tell you one guy that I did tell you pre-show that's kind of hit me all the time. I was kind of re-looking through the list, and he's kind of in the area of a Quay Walker.
Okay.
That I feel like a team might be out on. And that's Devin Lloyd for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Ooh, okay.
I think Devin Lloyd, I just get the feeling that they're just kind of letting it roll till he's done, and then they're ready to move on. I don't think he's ever been what they thought they were going to get out of him, and he's been a pretty okay IDP guy as long as he's healthy. He's been like okay, but he's never been a guy that's blown me away. Yeah, he's just never blown me away in real life football or in fantasy. He's been okay. He's been okay. At this point, I think the Jags are so ready to move on from so many guys. They just want a clean house of anyone not named Trevor Lawrence or Brian Thomas Jr. I think like everybody else on that team, this the GM, the coaching staff, I think they're ready just to clean house. So I really think Devin Lloyd, we could be seeing the end of him on the Jags. And if he's not on the Jags, a team that spent really high draft capital on him, I'm not sure there's a ton of other teams out there just ready to snack him up. So if I have Lloyd, if I got anybody that likes him or still in on him, he's a guy I would be looking to move. I really would, because I just think this linebacker, I think this linebacker core, I think the whole entire core is ready to just turn, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I just think this whole Jaguars linebacker core is just really set to fall off a cliff. We talked about it a million times. I'm a big Chad Muma guy. It's never happened. At this point, I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think he's going to be a career backup. But I just think this whole group, I think they're ready to move on, man. I really do. And I don't know if they hit free agency that we're going to be seeing like teams come running with big money for these guys either. I just don't see it. So I know I threw you for a curveball because that's not someone we talked about. But as I'm like perusing the list, I'm like, man, I don't love Devin Lloyd. And I know people that like him more than I do. So he's a follower for me and a guy I would move if I could.
So, I go back to, so I agree with you in terms of a faller on the Jaguars, that there is a linebacker that should be going down lists, I believe. For me, it's Olukun. He's the one that I'm kind of, starting to.
I'm with you on both of them. That's what I told you. I'm like, I'm really out on this entire Jaguars this linebacker crew. I feel like they're all going to plummet in this next year. I think they're all going to lose huge value this year. I really do.
You look back to some of his performances over the course of his career, Devin Lloyd, that is, per PFF, he actually had in 2024 his best graded year as a linebacker. But that being the case, I understand the need for development. At the same time, I don't know. For me, it's Olukun that's a little bit more on the edge here. Just you see the dip in tackle production. If anything, I would see if I had to guess, that would be the person who'd be falling the most. It is Olukun over Devin Lloyd, just because we are seeing some increasing trends in Lloyd's performance. But the question is, with the first 2 years, in 2022 and 2023, just poor production. Then all of a sudden it's like, he has great production his 2024 season. Part of me wonders, like, are they like buttering him up to be like a trade candidate or somebody that could be moved in a piece where he's dealt for draft picks somewhere? It's one of those things, like, is what we saw last year is it money or a mirage, like we were talking about during the in season episodes of Shoot the Gap? Part of me wonders about that. So from that point of view, I can understand the need why you'd want to move down Devin Lloyd, but on the flip side, I just feel like Oluokun's tackle floor, it's starting to come down. It's starting to come down a little bit, and that is a sign where that's no bueno. So we go back to 2021. In terms of solo tackles, 131, 150 and 22, 126 and 23, dropped down to 76 and 24. That's the jump. So you mentioned Shaq Leonard having a drastic jump. This is
crazy.
This could be
well, and then match those guys next to each other, Jorge. I mean, Olukun 108 tackles last year per Fantasy Pros in 14 games. Devin Lloyd 113 in 16 games.
Right.
So we saw a big drop from him, and Devin Lloyd, who played 2 more games, ended up with 5 more tackles.
That's not great.
2 more games. Like, so we're seeing already one guy really dropping, and then you're taking another guy and going, oh, he had one of his better years, and it was worse than the guy who we think is falling off a cliff. That's why I'm saying, like, Devin Lloyd for me. I mean, if you look him at Fantasy Pro scoring, he was right next to, just a hair in front of overall scoring and slightly behind in points per game to Micah McFadden from the Giants. Yikes. And do you think anyone is looking at Micah McFadden and going, oh, like, he's worth Devin Lloyd? No. No, he's worth way less than him. Josie Jewell played 4 games less than Devin Lloyd and ended up averaging over 3 points more per game, played 4 games less, and only had 5 less points per fantasy pro scoring. Like, I just
Yeah.
think Devin Lloyd is so overrated. It's just, he's one of those guys. Again, he's not a terrible player. He's like, okay, just for what he is, and the guys are in his range as far as IDP scoring. I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, there's so many guys you could get for dirt cheap where like he's costing you way more than that for IDP purposes. So that's why to me he's a faller. And I think they're ready to just completely rebuild this entire linebacker crew starting next year.
That is a very good point there with Devin Lloyd. To the fact that he's in the Micah McFadden range, that is not so good. All right, let's go to a riser. You and I both have risers for the Falcons, believe it or not. Yours makes a lot more sense than mine, but I do have a rationale as to why he is a riser. So, do you want to go first, or should I go first?
I mean, we can combo them on the same team and why we like both of them.
All
It's up
right.
to you.
Okay. So for me, I like the free agent signing of Devon Diablo. I think he is the backup to Troy Anderson. It came down to Nate Landman going into free agency to the Los Angeles Rams, who I think will be a riser. I don't think Troy Reader is the long term answer there for the linebacking position for the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, I think Landman, they brought him in for a reason, right? And we all know that you mentioned it earlier. You're a linebacker for the Rams. That's IDP gold right there. So they have Troy Anderson now, and Diablo, like I said, is currently per our lads ranked right behind him in the pecking order. We go back to Troy Anderson as a starting linebacker outside of his rookie year in 2023. He played 2 games due to injury. You go back to last year, 7 games, wildly inefficient. Not really giving you a lot of the fantasy production that you're looking for. And here's the thing. Okay, Divine Diablo is not great as a linebacker. You know what I mean? If you could be inserted into your defensive back spot, now we're talking something different because there's more of a tackle floor with him being dual eligible as a linebacker defensive back than being a straight linebacker. If he's just one of these linebackers, he's falling down into like the 50s and potentially LB 60s in points per game. At the same time, what do we say about everything in fantasy football? All the positions, it's opportunity to pathway to snaps is the opportunity. I don't even know what I'm even trying to say. The pathway to snaps is basically what's going to help you get fantasy points there for your IDP linebackers or any position. And unfortunately, Troy Anderson hasn't been the model of health, and nobody wants to bank on injury or health or whatnot. But you know, the fact that they went out in free agency and addressed the linebacking position, and it happens to be the guy who's starting right behind Troy Anderson, that could be something. And like I said, Von Diablo is not necessarily great per linebacker standards, but again, he could fill in a need or a void should Troy Anderson go down. So the fact that there is the potential for that opportunity is the reason why I'm moving Divine Diablo a little bit up in my dynasty rankings as a linebacker.
I think if you're in a deep league where people are really struggling to find linebacker help, I absolutely love him. Like you said, you're going to get him super cheap. And I love Troy Anderson. He's like a Chad Buma for me. I love both those guys when they came out. He's awesome when he's healthy, but he can't stay healthy. If Diablo gets in there, and here's the other thing, they're not great at box safety and they're not great at slot corner. Could Diablo slide into a little bit of that for them? I think there's a chance on passing downs that he could get in there a little bit. So I think if you've got places where people have dropped him in deeper leagues, he's definitely a guy I would stash. I think Diablo's a huge stash right now because of Anderson's health. I mean, if Anderson can stay healthy, we haven't seen it yet. He's great when he plays, but I think Diablo is going to figure out a way to get on the field here for this team. I think he's going to play a decent amount. I actually love him. I love that call by you. I hadn't even really thought about it much. But yeah, he's a guy that most likely, if somebody needed to make space on their team and they drop people for their rookie draft, he's a guy that could be out there on the free agent wire. That would be a great stash there. Going along with that, my guy, and this seems like kind of opposite of what we should be talking about, because we're talking about risers and how is a guy who was like top 5 a riser, but Caden Ellis is still not getting the respect he deserves in IDP Dynasty for what he did last year. In Fantasy Pro scoring, he was number 4 overall. I had a couple leagues where we did a little more big play scoring, and he was either the number 1 or number 2 scoring linebacker in our league. Number 4 in Fantasy Pros. He's getting nowhere near ranked that or taken there at all. I mean, if you look at DLF, I just was quickly looking at their rankings right now. He's linebacker 26. I know he's 29. He's 29 years old, so he's a little bit older, but we've seen linebackers easily can play into their early mid 30s, especially if they're not a guy who's completely playing with athleticism and speed, which is not him. He's a big guy. He's, crashing the line. He's making tackles. To me right now, he's just way cheaper than he should be. Like, I mean, in the mid 20s, like I just looked at my list. I'm like, I'm too low on him. I just looked at my rankings. I'm like, I'm way too low on him. I've got to move him up. Even though he's a little bit older, you got to think with Landman gone, which he was kind of fighting Landman and Anderson, back and forth, those 3 guys in that spot. I think it's clear cut after last year. He's the guy in Atlanta. I don't think there's any question anymore. I think it's Ellis and everybody else. So to me, now that you're not worried about Ellis being the man, to me, he's got to move up lists. I think he's got to be, to me, I know there's a lot of studs out there. There's a lot of talented guys, and you could push him down a little bit because of age, but it's hard not to see that he's in the 12 to 15 range for me. Especially when, I mean, obviously you can get guys that are 21, 22, and say long-term, they got a longer career. But if you want production over the next 2, 3, 4 years, which is where I kind of think you should be playing Dynasty. I mean, you don't want to be trying to look, I'm going to get 10, 12 years out of this guy, are you? Like, you don't know. You want to look at, like, what can I get the next couple of years? I just think he's way too low. He should be low in LB1 and super high in LB2, I think, in IDP. And he's just not getting that love. Again, not a sexy name, kind of a late hitter. Wasn't a guy people talked about when he was young, so people kind of forget about him. I just think the production is way too good for where he's going. And like we just talked about where I got him in that IDP. And again, that's not a dynasty league. It's just a straight redraft charity league. But I mean, for me to get Caden Ellis in the 5th round is pretty wild, I think.
No, the disrespect for Caden Ellis is astounding to me, and I still don't. If anything, you look at the draft acquisitions of Pierce and Walker. That is great. Jesse Bates coming back. As safety again, now playing. I think he's going to be slotted as the strong safety currently. Divine Diablo. I feel like this is an opportunity for Caden Ellis to really assert himself as one of these defensive captains here, just because of his play on the field. He's going to be the one who's wearing the green dot, calling the plays on the field. You have, he has the ability to rush the quarterback. He has shown that whether when he was in New Orleans or when he came over to the Falcons in free agency a couple seasons ago. He is by far their best linebacking option, and I agree with you. The disrespect is a little bit too much given what he was able to do this past year. All right, so folks, that's going to do it for our risers and fallers for IDP linebackers. If you want to check out more of our IDP Dynasty rankings, head over to fantasyandframes.com where you can find mine. And of course, you can head over to DLF where you can find JT's work over there. Before we get out of here, anything you want to plug, JT?
Just drafting. If you got any questions, trades, asking about moves, who you draft where, do that. I've got an article coming out this week on DLF. A bunch of people have been asking for a combined offensive, defensive rookie dynasty draft. I've got an article coming out. I know me and you have talked about it. We're going to probably re-talk about it here coming up. Now that we see more stuff. So if you're interested in that, if you're in a couple leagues coming up that are doing offensive, defensive IDP rookie drafts, I'm going to try to give you an idea where I think guys should probably go. Obviously, It's totally league dependent when it comes to IDP, but I'm going to give you kind of my general idea of where I think you should be slotting in some of these IDP players in the middle of all these offensive guys.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here on Shoot the Gap. And of course, if you have any questions in IDP Fantasy Football, you can reach out to JT at JT Orange or me at Jorge B. Edwards. And of course, make sure to follow us at Fantasy and Frames on all your social media channels and over on YouTube. Hit that follow and like and subscribe buttons. We really appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. And we'll be back next week where we break down the risers and fallers at the defensive back position, both at cornerback and at safety. So for JT, I'm Jorge. See you next week.